Welcome, I'm Ananya Datta and I'm back with another edition of Race to Power. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. After no consensus over this new Speaker of India's lower house, the NDA government and India bloc are locking horns, giving their separate names for the post. In France, the president has issued an alarmist warning just 5 days before snap elections. Emmanuel Macron says the far right or the extreme left will bring civil war to the country. We decode if that's a possibility. All right, now falling to reach a consensus after jostling over who will become India's next Speaker of the lower house of the Parliament or the Lok Sabha, the BJP-led NDA government and the Congress-led India bloc opposition are locking horns. The Lok Sabha Speaker will be elected on Wednesday, that is June 26th. Interestingly, this is the first instance in independent India's history that elections will be held for the Speaker post. The lower house's Speaker and Deputy Speaker have been chosen through consensus between the ruling party and the opposition. But the question is, who are these contenders? In the fray are BJP's Om Birla and Congress's K. Suresh. Birla is a three-time Member of Parliament and Rajasthan's Kota MP and served as the Speaker in the 17th Lok Sabha. If he wins the contest for the post, he will be the first person to become the Speaker for the second term in 25 years. Opposition India bloc candidate K. Suresh is an 8-time parliamentarian from Kerala and the longest-serving Lok Sabha MP. He was first elected to Lok Sabha in 1989. The cracks became apparent on Tuesday morning. This as the BJP sought the opposition's consensus over the reappointment of Birla ahead of the noon deadline to file nominations. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh even engaged with opposition to build consensus for appointing the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, but to no avail. The opposition India bloc said it was ready to support Mr. Birla's candidature, proving it was given the deputy's post. The BJP reportedly wanted to discuss the deputy speaker's post later, but the opposition was not having it.
राजनाथ सिंह जी ने खारगे जी से कहा, देखिए आप हमारे स्पीकर को सपोर्ट कीजिए। ऑपोजिशन, पूरी ऑपोजिशन ने कहा है, हमने सब के सब से बात की है, पूरे ऑपोजिशन ने कहा है कि हम स्पीकर को सपोर्ट करेंगे, मगर कन्वेंशन ये है कि डेप्यूटी स्पीकर ऑपोजिशन को मिलना चाहिए।
Not much later, reports emerged that K. Suresh would contest against Om Birla. Visuals of NDA leaders signing a motion paper in favour of Om Birla soon followed suit. Given the BJP-led alliance's clear majority, Birla is likely to emerge victorious on Wednesday. This as the ruling coalition commands 293 votes, while the opposition India bloc has about 232. Let's shift focus now. Another day, another election showdown in the United Kingdom. A face-off between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer got off to a terrible start for the Prime Minister with tough questions on the betting scandal involving the Tories and also immigration. However, Sunak did recover and towards the end managed to inflict severe blows on Starmer. When asked about inflicting distrust on the British people, Sunak said that he spent a summer trying to persuade the Tory party that what she was saying was wrong and that he was right in what he said about trust. Turning it into an attack on Starmer, the UK Prime Minister said, and I'm quoting, "And that is why people can trust what I say about Labour as well." He also warned over Labour tax rises, asking the audience, can they afford a €2,000 worth of tax increase? You see, Labour has announced that it would raise taxes by $2,000 per working household. On the other hand, Sunak admitted that he wished his government made more progress in some areas. He also went on to extent of calling the last few years quote-unquote frustrating. However, Sunak made it clear that he does not regret calling the elections early. He reasoned that strengthening the economy was his #1 priority, and he vowed to work his socks off if re-elected on July 4th. Furthermore, according to 2 reports, during the Tory rule in the United Kingdom, there has been a huge rise in poverty. Low wages and price increases devastated the lives of 900,000 children in the country. And as per the research by the Trades Union Congress TUC, over the past 14 years, that's the Tory rule in the United Kingdom, an additional 1,350 children a week in households with at least one working parent were dragged into poverty. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies think tank, 30% of children now live in households below the official poverty line. This is up from 27% in the year 2010. Whereas a separate analysis from the Resolution Foundation think tank said average wages in the country now are just 16 euros a week, or 2.5 higher in real terms than when the Conservatives came to power in 2010. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister has confirmed he's not being investigated in the gambling commission, which is probing into the bets placed on the date of the general election. Sunak said that his party is set to conduct its own internal probe into the allegations, which have dodged Tory campaigns less than 2 weeks ahead of the July 4th elections. The UK Prime Minister also said that his party will act if internal inquiry finds any wrongdoing. With just a little over a week to go for the elections, the Conservative Party is staring at a dramatic collapse, with polls predicting a victory for the Labour Party. A poll conducted by The Telegraph suggested that the Tories would settle for 86 seats against 365 in 2019. Also, it predicted that Sunak may lose his constituency Richmond and North Allerton and become the first ever British Prime Minister to lose his election seat.
Mr. Speaker, this is one of the greatest...
Before the weekend snap elections, France's president has issued a grave warning. If the voters choose the far right or extreme left, the country could see a civil war. The statement has stoked fear among voters, politicians, as well as investors. Here's what Emmanuel Macron exactly said, and I'm quoting, "When you are fed up and daily life is hard, you can be tempted to vote for the extremes that have quicker solutions. But the solution will never be to reject others. The programs of the two extremes lead to civil war." You see, the far-right National Rally Party looks set to win the most votes this Sunday. Whether they will get a majority, that remains to be seen, but they do have a coalition to fall back on. Reacting to Macron's civil war comment, this is what Marine Le Pen had to say. Apart from domestic politics, foreign policy is another aspect. With France's political discourse changing, it isn't clear at this moment whether it will have an impact on the country's foreign policy. The French president says he is ready to hold talks with the Russian president over the war in Ukraine. Macron says that the power of dialogue can bring tensions under control. Interestingly, it came the same day as the far-right party talked tough on Russia. The probable prime ministerial candidate Jordan Bardella sought to reassure European allies over his commitment to Ukraine. Some might see this as a softening of stance, since his National Rally Party has been branded as pro-Russia. You see, in the past, Marine Le Pen has expressed her admiration of President Vladimir Putin. Moscow, on the other hand, has long quoted leaders of Europe's political far right, hoping to exploit any signs of divisions.
Aspirations clairement exprimées par les Français.
Coming back to the domestic front, elections usually call for volatile markets, but the prospect of what critics are calling a politically extreme party governing France is worrying the investors. With little or no government experience, it is not known what is expected of their economic policies. Remember, France is the Eurozone's second biggest economy. What happens in Paris is bound to have a ripple effect and reach Brussels. Shifting focus to Israel now, at the Knesset floor during a special session called by the Israeli opposition, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the opposition leader Yair Lapid traded barbs over the war in Gaza, tensions with Lebanon and Israel's national security. All of this is taking place as the people of Israel continue to call for the resignation of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well as his government. Now, Netanyahu berated ministers who said and were caught drilling a hole in the state's boat during wartime. Lapid responded to Netanyahu saying that nothing would remain of his legacy other than the failure of October 7th, when Hamas rampaged inside Israel and took dozens of citizens hostage. The Israeli opposition leader accused Netanyahu of bearing the utmost responsibility of what he describes as the massacre of Israeli citizens and the military failure. Lapid repeated calls for the Israeli Prime Minister to resign. He said that the Israeli Prime Minister is a threat to the national security and is harming country's foreign relations. Lapid referred to the findings by the Commission of Inquiry formed under then Premier Naftali Bennett in 2022 about corruption in purchase of submarines and several other naval vessels by the Netanyahu government, former military general and national security advisors. The committee sent cautionary letters to 5 individuals, including the Prime Minister and former Mossad chief Yossi Cohen. In the heated Knesset Finance Committee meeting, opposition ministers blasted Netanyahu's decision to use budget excesses from 2023 rather than funding the war needs. National Unity MK Orit Farkash argued that while Netanyahu plans to mobilize IDF troops to fight Iran-backed Hezbollah militants on the border with Lebanon, Israel is not economically prepared for the war in the north. He reminded that the Northern Front is not even included in the budget, and much of the funds were debated for the education reform program. This means that VAT hike by 1% and taxation on the savings for Israeli citizens. Meanwhile, more troubles mounted for the Israeli Prime Minister and his governing coalition after the Israeli Supreme Court's landmark ruling that the military must begin drafting ultra-Orthodox men for compulsory service. The court put an end to the decades-old system that granted ultra-Orthodox males broad exemptions from the military service but made it mandatory for the secular Jewish majority to enlist. The arrangement for a significantly long time was slammed as discriminatory by the critics who pushed for Israel's ultra-Orthodox communities to share the burden of protecting the country and fight on the front lines. The court struck down the law that codified exemptions in 2017, and this implies that the military service applies to the ultra-Orthodox like any other Israeli citizen. The military service for ultra-Orthodox Jews became a heated topic in Israel, with the military embroiled in a war in Gaza and an escalating conflict on its border with Lebanon. The ruling wasn't welcomed by the ultra-Orthodox Jews. Now, stakes are high for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as his government includes 2 Haredi parties whose departure could trigger new elections, which opinion polls indicate he would lose. Let's just focus to the United States now, where the country is heading for presidential elections on November 5th this year. And as this happens, former US President Donald Trump's key advisors have presented him with a plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine if he wins the presidential election scheduled to take place later this year. Now, according to retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the strategy involves pressuring Ukraine to enter peace talks by threatening to withhold US weapons and warning Russia of increased US support for Ukraine if they refuse to negotiate. Fred Flitz, another advisor to Trump, said, and I'm quoting, "I'm not claiming that he, that is Trump, agreed with it or agreed with every word of it, but we were pleased to get the feedback we did. Some experts have expressed concerns that the plan by Trump's advisors could give Moscow the upper hand in talks. Trump spokesperson Stephen Chung also said that statements made by Trump or the authorized members of his campaign should be deemed official. Trump has repeatedly stated that a top priority in his second term will be to quickly negotiate an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump's spokesperson has said, and I'm quoting again, the war between Russia and Ukraine never would have happened if Donald Trump were president. Something that Trump has also been reiterating during the campaign trail. On the other hand, Kremlin has rather said that any peace plan proposed by a possible future Trump administration would have to reflect the reality on the ground. It added that Russian President Vladimir Putin is open to negotiations. Remember, Russia invaded neighboring Ukraine in February of 2022, and since then tens of thousands have died on both sides, making this the bloodiest fighting in Europe since World War II. United States has spent more than $70 billion on military aid for Ukraine since Moscow's invasion. Biden has consistently pushed for more Ukraine aid, and his administration supports its eventual accession to NATO. Earlier in June, Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a 10-year bilateral security agreement, and Putin said that this month the war could end if Ukraine agreed to drop its ambitions to join NATO and hand over 4 eastern and southern provinces claimed by Russia. So what happens on November 5th, and in case Donald Trump makes a comeback to the White House, the foreign policy towards the Russia-Ukraine war will definitely be a talking point.
President, it's good to see you again. The Ukrainian people have been incredibly brave, never given up, never staying, never even yielding, and it's impressive. And you saw the reception you received when everyone stood and gave you a standing ovation. All right. Mr. President, it's good to see you again. Yeah.
Let's now talk about the Democratic camp and what's happening there. There's a development in the Hunter Biden federal gun case. His attorneys are now trying to seek a new trial in the case, and the move comes just 2 weeks after a jury found him guilty of lying about his drug use while purchasing a gun in 2018. After the guilty verdict, 54-year-old Hunter Biden became the first child of a sitting U.S. president to be criminally convicted. All of this is happening just 5 months before the presidential elections that's slated in the country. Now, although Hunter Biden's legal team's motion does not argue against the merits of the case, it does cite a technicality on a procedural matter to challenge the trial's basis. While filing the plea on Monday, Biden's attorney argued that the conviction should be vacated. Their reasoning was that the trial began without a quote-unquote mandate from the appeals court allowing the trial to proceed. For the benefit of our viewers, we would like to tell you that a mandate is the document by which an appellate court formally notifies a lower court of its decision. Hunter Biden was found guilty, remember, of all 3 criminal counts on 11th of July. All 3 criminal counts in the case are a consequence of Biden's purchase of a revolver at a Delaware gun store in October of 2018. Hunter Biden was in possession of the gun for about 11 days, and after the course of a 7-day trial, prosecutors relied on his family members' testimony and his text messages and memoir to convince jurors that he was an active user of crack cocaine when he bought the gun. On the other hand, his lawyers argued that he was in recovery at the time and did not consider himself as an addict when he purchased the weapon. Hunter Biden faces another case in September in California this time. Let's refocus some other stories now. After Russia blamed the United States for a missile attack on Crimea, Pentagon claimed that Ukraine makes its own targeting decisions and conducts its own military operations. According to Russia's defense ministry, Ukraine used army tactical missile systems, rockets supplied and programmed by the United States. The ministry claimed 4 of the rockets were intercepted over the city of Sevastopol, but fragments from the 5th rocket led to casualties among civilians on the ground. The strike left at least 4 people dead and more than 150 injured. Russia's foreign ministry had summoned US's ambassador over the attack. In the meeting, Moscow reiterated that Washington bears equal responsibility with Kiev for the attack and formally warned of a retaliation. Thereafter, in a statement, US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the country lamented any civil loss of life.
We provide weapons to Ukraine so it can defend its sovereign territory against armed aggression. That includes in Crimea, which of course is part of Ukraine. And Russia could stop this war today and end the suffering caused by the war Russia launched today if it would stop its occupation of sovereign Ukrainian territory and stop launching attacks on civilians.
Meanwhile, Russia also accused the United Nations of double standards.
We do not deliberately target any civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. Only that infrastructure that relates to the military-industrial complex of Ukraine. We do not bomb cities. We do not bomb civilians. So that's it. We are not doing what Israel is doing in Gaza.
A day after the attack on Crimea, Russian double-tap missile attacked Ukrainian town of Pokrovsk. At least 5 people were killed and 41 others were injured in what Kiev said was one of the largest attacks on civilians. As tensions on the battlefield continue to escalate, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky replaced Kiev's commander of joint forces. Zelensky appointed Brigadier General Andrei Natov as commander-in-chief, replacing Lieutenant General Yuri Sodol. The Ukrainian president has ordered the new head of Ukraine Security Service, or SBU as it's called locally, to clear out those not committed to Ukraine and who discredit the agency. This is not the first time, remember. In January of 2024, Zelensky fired a slew of senior officials, including 5 regional governors, 4 deputy ministers, and a senior presidential office member. And that's all we have for you. Thanks for watching WION World is One with me, Ananya Datta. Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S. And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to Yo1 Health Resort. Make your reservation at yo1.com.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey